YouTube, welcome back. This is the Allegheny Northern in N scale, and today we are going to do a review of the new ScaleTrains Conrail SD40-2s. It's going to be kind of a quick review because we've already reviewed and looked at the SD40-2s from ScaleTrains, so we kind of know what to expect here. This is just the latest release, and I have them in the Conrail livery. Now, the reason I'm showing them to you in the box, no, I'm not doing an unboxing. You know I do not like unboxing videos, but what I did want to show you is that in the box there are no loose parts or missing pieces that you can see floating around in there. And the reason I'm showing you this is because a viewer had noted on, I think it was the July update, that they had received a ScaleTrains model SD40-2, and there were parts, snowplows and stuff on the inside of the box, and I just wanted to show you that in this case I don't have that. So I'm going to go ahead and open these two babies up and we'll take a closer look at them. Okay folks, so now out of the box, I did not find any loose pieces sitting in the boxes, so everything was together and ready to rock and roll. So the two models that I received didn't have any issues. Now, I went to probably the best place online to find photographs of locomotives, and mainly, especially extinct locomotives, I guess, if you want to call them that. And I went to railpictures.net and I looked up the two locomotives that are sitting in front of you. I did not find 6416, but I did find 6361. And obviously 6361 had a very interesting life because, as I found only a couple of pictures of it, it did have some different paint schemes and some different items that I noticed in the photographs. So first off, I'd like to point out here, I'm just going to put these two locomotives together. You'll notice that on 6416, the up front grabs, and I'm going to zoom in here just a little because I think it'll help you out. The grab irons there on the locomotive, here we've got them in blue on the 6416 unit, and they are white on the 6361. I can confirm that at one point in time, the 6361 did indeed have the white grabs, but it also had blue at one point, so depending on when the model was actually produced, that would determine whether or not that is an accurate reading on that locomotive. Regardless, there is also a photograph. It is a newer photograph in which the units did have the white grab, that there was also an MU hose along the front here. It was the dummy plugs. The photograph showed it, but most of the photographs did not show that connection. So I don't know when that got added into the mix here, and you don't get it with the model. So if you wanted to model that particular version, you would have to go back and add it yourself. But looking here at the model, all of the details as far as what is on the locomotive seem to match the photographs of what I have, and that includes a little box right here that is visible in the photographs. I don't know if that's a battery box or what that is, but from the photograph that I have available, it did have that little box right there. So they've got it on both models. Like the earlier version, the first run of the SD40-2s, you on the truck detail here, you've got the sanders. You do have on this side here, you've got the data recorders. You've got the chains up here. They're not loose chains. They're separately applied, but that's okay because for the scale that we're modeling here, it's kind of going to be the thing. The brass tabs in the trucks are visible there. That doesn't bother me as much as I know it might bother some of you, because it's fairly innocuous when it's on the rails, but it is visible again, and I think it actually was more visible on the earlier model from the first run. But you do have the wind deflectors on the side. You've got obviously all the separately applied grabs. You do have the separately applied windshield wipers, and you've got your snowplow and your MU hoses as well. When I come back around to the back side here, the back side of the model does not have a snowplow. That is in keeping with the prototype. And you do get the MU hoses, and then coming up here, you can see all of the separately applied grabs along the top leading there to the roof. And then you've got your excellent fan detail. From the photographs that I have here, this appears to meet the fan configuration that was on this particular locomotive. And you've got your horn up front, as well as your fill for the sand. So this locomotive, this 6361, did have the black spot here on the top. And when you look at the short hood on 6416, you'll see that it's not blue, or not black, it's blue. And I don't have a photograph of this model to show you that difference, but I make the assumption that that is what that model looks like. And then, of course, you've got the little view window there looking into the prime mover. And, of course, all of the decals here are clean. The printing is neat. And I'm sure that if we could magnify in on that, we could read it. I don't know if this is going to go much closer or want to focus. That's pretty close there. That's not bad for this camera. So excellent details on here. This is very similar to the details that you would see on the first runs of the locomotive. And let's take a quick spin here underneath. You do have the same exact detail on the fuel tank as far as where the speaker is hidden. You've got those two screws there. So my guess is that if you had problems with the original set of SD40-2s running on your layout, this one looks like it's going to be very similar, just because it has a very similar build on it. And while we're here, let's go ahead and just bring in all of the gauges here, and we can go ahead and just check couplers and clearances. They do use their own custom coupler system. It is compatible with microtrains, so that is excellent. And let me just turn this here so you can see what's going on. It looks like it's riding a little bit high on the front, so that's interesting, because usually if they run anything, they run low. That might be an issue when we get to actually running these. And looks like a little bit closer here on the back. Let's check the other locomotive while we're here. If you don't have one of these gauges, you definitely want to grab one. It's running a little bit high on the back here too. And it's definitely in the coupler box. I'm not going to get too excited until I see how it does on the hills. And that one's almost perfect. So looks like the two back ones are on and the front one is off. And you might as well check the trip pins here while we're doing it. Make it all official. And they're sitting way high, so that'll clear. And let's check the other side as well. And yeah, of course that one's going to clear as well, so no issue there. And I'm betting we're going to see the same thing here on this side. Yep, clears, room to spare. And I'm sure we're going to clear on this one. Be surprised if we got it wrong on the fourth one. Nope, so we're good. Our trip pins are going to clear. There's more than enough space, so no big deal. Okay, so detail-wise, once again, these are ScaleTrains. I think I would be very surprised if the details were not accurate, if they didn't look perfect. So that's kind of what I would expect here. Beautiful looking models. Let's go see how they sound, and let's see how they run. So we're going to do something a little bit different here with how the locomotives run, and we do the run test on it, because previously what we've done is we've taken it over to the layout. I've broken the locomotives in. You get to see them after I've had them running for a couple of hours forwards and backwards. So all of the factory goop and whatnot has been cleaned up, and the wheels are ready to rock and roll. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what they run like right out of the box, and then I'm going to show you what they run like after the break-in. And then if I find any kind of CV adjustments I need to make along the way, I will tell you what those are, just so you might have the same issue and you can make those adjustments. And if I make no adjustments, then we'll just leave it alone. Now, I will tell you that a lot of folks were adjusting the CVs on the first run of locomotives, and it was to try to even out because some of them were a little jerky when it first started. I did that at the recommendation of a few folks, and I found the locomotives ran very poor after making those adjustments. So I ended up doing factory resets on the two that I adjusted, and they've run fine. So if I make any CV adjustments, you need to take a look at that. And I'm not saying that the folks that told me to make those adjustments were wrong. It might have just worked for their model and may not have been what mine was experiencing. So I have noticed that there seems to be a pretty big difference in some of the models that are coming out as far as quality goes. And it seems like it's not so much in the finishes, it's more in the actual drivetrain itself of the model. So I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's a product of them being made overseas or what. But in any event, I don't know how to control that. But if I make any adjustments, I will let you know what they are so that you know what they are. And that is a starting point for you should your model experience what mine does. So, all right, enough BS. Let's get over to the layout. Let's turn them on, see what they sound like. Okay, so we are here on the layout. We are going to go ahead and get this locomotive up and ready to rock and roll here. So first thing we're going to do is we know that we are going to have a default setting of 3 as far as the address goes. And so we'll go ahead now and run through the startup sequence. I'm going to put the microphone a little bit closer here because I turned the layout on, and every freaking sound locomotive that I owned it decided to run its startup sequence. So I have a cacophony of locomotive sounds right now, and I could spend the next 20 minutes shutting them all off, but I think we're just going to move the microphone a little bit closer to the SD40-2 and run it from there. Okay, so that was to give you a little bit of a flavor here of the sound. So you heard the startup, and now you heard the horn and the bell. And I'm going to make the assumption that both of these locomotives are the same. We will put them both on the track, and if they're different, I will play those sounds individually for you. But we are now in idle mode, and sounds fantastic. You can hear obviously all the fans and the compressors coming on, and it's cool even when these things are idling just to hear the sounds coming from it. And this is a great time to mention the sound is coming from an ESU Loc Sound V5 decoder. And so if you are going to purchase this in DCC with sound, that is the sound that you are going to get and the sounds you're going to hear. If you opt not to get the sound equipped model and you want to go with DCC ready, it saves you about $100, but you have to go ahead and put a $100 sound decoder in it to make it have sound. And then, of course, you also have to have the ESU Loc programmer to do that, which is another $189 behind it if you don't have it. So in the long run, if you are going to go DCC and sound, the wise cost decision is to just purchase it that way. Although I know some of you like to add your own sounds and your own decoders, and you like to funk with all that stuff, and if that's your thing, then that's your thing. Knock yourself out. For the rest of us who just want to get to running the trains, you are going to be set back here roughly $255 for this model. Now, that's right, they are steadily increasing. So the last round, I believe, of the SD40-2s was, I think, around that same mark. The model before that was $249. So yeah, the world economy sucks, and you are paying for it in your hobby as well as in your groceries. So just understand that for the full Monty here to get your sound and get your DCC, you are looking at about 255, and then of course I think they add Uncle Sam and shipping and all that other stuff to it. So just be prepared for that. It does have a high price tag. Okay, so now that we've got it on and it's been running here for just a second, let's actually put it into gear and move it forward. So I am notching up here. I'm going to go to about 5% throttle. And we are crawling at a nice slow speed here. Actually, it's very, very smooth. That's nice to see. And doesn't help that I picked the switch there. So now I got to let it go back through its startup mode. But fortunately on these models, it's quick on the SD40-2s. And let's run her backwards. We're back at about 5% throttle. Just want to see what happens here. Okay, at slow speed, we roll nicely. Remind you, this is not broken in. This is just out of the box. This is what she's running like. So I'm seeing her move for the first time, just as you're seeing her move for the first time. Okay. I realize I better fix that truck, otherwise it's going to derail again when I get there. Alright, just got it at about 15% throttle now. And yes, I turned the flange squeal on. Alright, I did move that out of the camera shot. I know I got a pretty tight camera shot here. So let's go ahead and adjust the camera. And okay, so I'm probably going to cut this section just a smidgen short. And the reason is because I am, we're coming up on lap 1 here. And the locomotives have both moved impeccably well. Very smooth. No jerking, no bouncing. They haven't gotten hung up on anything. It does appear like there's maybe a little bit more clearance under this one. It could just be my eyeballs being not calibrated tightly enough, but they are running very, very well. No issues. And so I think we're going to skip ahead here and jump into the load tests. And I actually, these are probably the smoothest running locomotives from ScaleTrains that I've ever brought out. Usually, like I said, it takes me a couple of hours of operation to break them in, and these ones, I don't know what they did differently, but they are extremely, extremely smooth. Okay, so we are going to do the pool test now, and I think by now you guys pretty much know how I do this. It's a 2% grade, and most locomotives handle about 6 cars on this grade. So I'm just going to start off right at 6, and we're not going to work our way up to it. So here we go. We've got 63, 61, and 6 coal porters behind it. These are the Kato cars. The wheel sets have been changed out for micro trains. And that is kind of become the quasi-standard here which we measure. So we're looking at 6 right now, and looks like she's going to handle 6 no problem. So, okay, we'll do this in multiples of 2 till we stall, so let's try 8. Okay, we are up to 8 cars, and we are at 30% throttle, which I don't know if I mentioned that beforehand, but that's kind of important. So that's kind of a respectable speed here for a single locomotive hauling some coal cars. Now, I'm not expecting it to be able to hold. Yeah, it's not going to do 8. Let's see if it'll do 7. Might do 7. Looks like 7 might be a magic number. Okay, so 8 is too much and 7's pushing it. But I think once we get some traction tires on these things, we'll be in good shape. So that is something that I should point out to everybody that I do on all of my sound locomotives. It's not ScaleTrains specific. It's just sound locomotives in general. I do put bullfrog snot on all of my locomotives. It does a couple of things. One, it saves on wearing down the wheels because they're not pulling on the grades as hard, so I can run longer trains and I don't necessarily worry about the wheels slipping. And also, it just, with the sound locomotives, they just don't have the pulling capacity that the older, say, Atlas and Cato units have. So it's almost become a necessity to have that if you're going to go with sound. If you've got steep grades, if your layout is flatter or your grades are more gentle, then you're probably okay and you don't need to worry about it as much. But I'd still recommend it even if you are running longer trains, let's say, just because, like I said, it'll help with that wheel slip. Now, let's go ahead and bring this thing home. Let's talk about the locomotives and give them their final score. Okay, let's start with the quality of the locomotive and the details and the looks that we're getting. And for that, ScaleTrains comes swinging in home with I'm going to say it's a 9.8. And here's why I did not go with a 10. And that is because I do have those marker lights on this locomotive that I think should light. I don't know why they don't. It is era specific. It does not have ditch lights. It shouldn't have ditch lights. This model didn't. But those marker lights, I'm pretty sure, should be lit. I don't know why they're not. So I'm a little bit upset by that, but honestly, it's not enough for me to take out a whole point, even a half point. So on the looks, 9.8. The separately applied details are phenomenal. Just the overall look of the locomotive, plus it's just stunning with all the separately applied details and the see-through fans, and they're nice models. Now, where I find that those nice models, and I'm making my air quotes here, get in the way is sometimes there's so much fine detail on these things that they actually sort of have operational issues because the sand hoses get in the way, or the brake chains get in the way, or some component on the trucks get in the way. In fact, I had that issue with a lot of the earlier locomotives, not necessarily the SD40-2s, but some of the other ones. And, it took a minute, but I was able to adjust them and not have to knock off any details, and it still worked just fine. But, I want to judge the performance of the locomotive based on how it comes out of the box, not what I have to do to it to make it work. So things that would cost the locomotive points: one, it doesn't run well, runs jerky, needs a lot of cleaning, that sort of thing, or just I've got parts and pieces that I've got to adjust. When you're buying a premium locomotive, I don't think you should have to adjust anything. I get that sometimes things get damaged in shipping. ScaleTrains does a pretty good job with their packaging to make sure that things don't move around. So I've never had that issue like some other folks have had. But, if you're going to pay $250, $255 plus for a locomotive, that thing should run pretty damn good when it comes out of the box. And with all the other ScaleTrains locomotives that I've had, there has been a break-in period, and they've run well after the break-in period. A little hesitant, started having to mess with some CVs, ended up resetting those CVs back to the factory default just because, that was actually the best setting that they had. So that was a little off-putting on some of the earlier, the last release of the SD40-2s. Would not stop me from getting them. In fact, I mean, I bought 5 of them. So, I still like the locomotives. They still perform the way I needed them to. It was just a little bit of an annoyance that I had to sort of exercise them. Now, these two get a 10 out of 10. And the reason they get a 10 out of 10 is because, one, they slow crawled right out of the box. I didn't have any issues with them. They were able to run loops around the layout without me needing to fidget with any tracks or make any adjustments on the locomotive. They responded well. The slow speed was good. The fast speed was good. Forwards, backwards, it didn't matter. These things just crushed it. So I don't know what ScaleTrains did between the first run of SD40s and the second run, but the second run, in my opinion, I was surprised because I was expecting to have the same sort of, I gotta let it run for a while and break it in. These ones are just like the last Atlas locomotive that I bought. Ran beautifully right out of the box, and this one is no different. So I'm giving it a 10. So that, if you were keeping score, it's a 19.8 out of 20 on my scale as far as locomotives. That is the highest ranking score of any locomotive that I've purchased. They've all had some issue. This is the first one to almost get a perfect score. So if you are looking for something that is a great locomotive, I highly recommend this. And I know you guys are all thinking, well, that's because you like ScaleTrains, and I do like ScaleTrains. I think they are one of the better manufacturers out there as far as the premium lines go. But they're not paying me to say this, and nobody does, so it's just what I see out of the box. Feel free when you guys get yours, if you have an experience that's different than mine, list it down below. That might be helpful for somebody else who's purchasing these locomotives, but I can tell you right now, these two ran beautifully out of the box for me. I highly recommend them. So if you are in the market for some SD40-2s, I obviously picked the Conrail, but they came out with several different roads. I know Norfolk Western was one. I think they had a couple of versions of that, and there were a few others that just not my area. So, but take a look at them. They run beautifully. I don't know if you can still get them from ScaleTrains, but I'm sure your hobby shop has them, and if your hobby shop doesn't, you're likely to find them at a train show here coming up. So, folks, hope this was helpful for you. Hope you enjoyed it, and happy railroading.